Welcome to the Cougar Coaches Show here on Mediacom Channel 22. My name is Cosmo with head coach of the cross-country teams for Columbia College, the men and women's coach, Tim Cornell. Coach, welcome back.
Hey, thanks for having me back. It's
good
to be here.
Yeah, it's into November. We are just around the corner, actually. Let's look forward on the calendar, but coming up in Columbia this weekend, you guys are very proud to host the American Midwest Conference Cross-Country Championships. That's Conference Championships hosting here in Columbia.
Yeah, it was a huge honor to just be there last year. And it was our first year, and we really wanted to do something in Columbia this year to show the Cougar family what cross-country was all about. So we think we're going to put on a great championship meet, have the members of the AMC here on Friday, and it should be not only a great event, but a good race.
How does that, is it a bid process? Did you apply to host? Is it kind of a rotation? It's different than it is with the other sports with, the top seed hosts an individual game rather than a meet, but how does that process work that Columbia ended up with that honor?
Sure. Well, the AMC has been growing every year, and most conferences do run on a rotation. So we advised that we would like to be on a rotation and volunteered to go first. We're close to the top of the alphabetical order anyway, so it was a good place to start and just a good way to showcase all of the schools year after year after year. So we bid to host, and it worked out. The next place was finding a place to host it. The city of Columbia was kind enough to let us use Cosmo Park, and after that, it's just hammering out the details.
Getting the course set up, and that'll be over the weekend, and we'll have some highlights from that event coming up here on Mediacom Channel 22 and throughout. Let's come back closer now. You had a pre-nationals meet going back to mid-October. Took a full men's team and a couple of the women to that event. Tell us a little bit of how the Cougars ran out there in Kansas.
Sure. Yeah, we took a full guys team. It was the first time we'd put a full guys team on the course, just with injuries and sicknesses. And they ran well. They beat Park University, who had been receiving votes in the national poll. It was a very good showing for them, and we did it without a key member. On the women's side, we only took two for a variety of reasons, weddings and sicknesses, all those kind of things. But a woman who's been running second for us, Emily Schultz, took fourth in that meet. So that was tremendous. That was an All-American type of performance, and we're excited to get her back on that course a few weeks from now.
Yeah, I was saying that was in Lawrence, Kansas, and that was as titled the Pre-Nationals, and because the national event will be there coming up in November. So what is that meet? Is that just like a normal regular competition meet for you guys, just on the actual course that you'll run later?
Yeah, it's exactly the same course that we'll run at the national championships, and a lot of teams, especially teams in the upper half of the NAI, want to see that course because they're going to be sending runners or teams to run on that course. And any time that you have a little bit of an advantage, it's great, and knowing the course backwards and forwards is certainly an advantage. So you see a lot of really good teams at that meet. It was a good time to see where you rank in terms of team-wise and see how your individuals fit into an All-American type of situation.
Something we kind of talked before, you hear a lot of the coaches talk about scouting reports, and I've always referenced to Coach Washington with the volleyball squad with their binders that are about this thick on every opponent, every player, every style, the way they serve, the way they return, so on and so forth. There's really not a ton of scouting that you can do necessarily in cross country. You can kind of get a feel for how teams have performed, and you can see the stats and times and things of that nature. But you can really actually get a decent scouting report, at least to prepare your runners as much mentally, which is a huge part of it. So they're not, it's not a brand new thing to them. All of a sudden, the pressures of here's the national competition, and now at least they've seen it before.
Absolutely. It's a tremendous mental boost is what it is. Having been on that course once, you alleviate some of the fear and some of the pressure that you might feel stepping into a new environment, and that's going to be an advantage for our kids in a couple weeks.
How do you use that pre-national to help coach for the conference, or is that more separated out and you kind of hang on to that for who makes it to the national?
Sure. Well, anytime you see a conference opponent, you want to see how they run, who they're putting on the course, what their fitness is, what their health is like. So that's certainly an advantage, but the races are very, very different. There will be about 55 people total in each the men's and women's race this coming week, as opposed to 300 or so in the national championships and the pre-national championships. So running in a field that size versus running in a field of 50 or 55 is a completely different race. You're by yourself a lot of times, and it becomes a focused and refocused task to execute your race, as opposed to hanging on to someone, passing someone each time. So there are things you can learn, and there are things that simply just don't equate.
Yeah, like you mentioned, the smaller group, your team ends up running more together in some aspects, at least based on the way it ends up scoring. Explain a little bit to someone who's watching, has come across the broadcast here and maybe doesn't understand how the scoring works in a cross-country meet itself. How does it line up with your team out there running?
Sure. Well, typically a cross-country team consists of 5 to 10, 11, 12 people. We'll be putting 5 and 6 runners on the course this week, and we're going to score the first 5 runners that come across the line. So if we have an athlete who's first and fifth and seventh, we're going to add all of those points together. The team that comes out with the lowest point total is the victor, and in this case it's a big deal because the champion of the conference will end up representing the conference at the national championship on November 23rd.
Is there another team that can also get in, or is it just the winner takes all and you're off to the nationals?
Typically it's winner take all unless the second team in the conference gets an at-large berth.
Gotcha, okay.
So if they're ranked highly enough in the polls, then that certainly can happen as well.
There is the seeding process, similar to how the other sports have their rankings, if you will.
Exactly.
Across the country. Easier just to win the whole thing, get the medal, and go to Lawrence.
Pretty much. That's what we'd like to do.
Now, and again, talking about the Columbia meet, I know by the time, a majority of the time when this airs, but the information where noon is the start time, noon and 1 o'clock out at Cosmo Park?
Yeah, the men are going to race at noon and the women race at 1. It's at Cosmo Park. Just as you enter the park, the course will be set up, I guess, on the southeast side of the main road. So we'd love to see as many people out there as possible. It's going to be a tremendous event.
Talking at a lunch today before coming over here to film this, and someone asked me, hey, I've seen you on the coaches show talking soccer and basketball. How does a cross-country coach recruit? What do you look for? How do cross-country runners find out that you guys have a program? You're in the second year of having cross-country. What is that process like, and when do you recruit other runners, high school or JUCO transfers?
Well, for us, it's a very grassroots kind of project. We want to be out there. We want to be seen at high school cross-country races. We want to talk to the high school cross-country coaches and to the high school cross-country athletes. Missouri is a tremendous cross-country state, and that's the base for our recruiting. So being out there at as many events as possible is the real key. And then finding the right kids who fit us from really a mental standpoint and have the ability to transition from a physical talent standpoint to be great athletes for us.
And we've talked about that transition with all the sports, but cross country is no different, just like it is from your junior varsity to varsity in high school, from high school to the NAIA level, as is NAIA to D1. There's a huge difference not only in the distances, but in the lengths of the race and in the physicality of cross country.
Absolutely.
And to do that, so I mean, if there's somebody out there that's got a star cross country child running great in high school, they can call you, right?
Call me, please call me.
Send a tape. Here's my kid running.
Yep.
It's just, it doesn't quite translate the same way as you say, well, here's a football highlight tape or whatever. Yeah. But at the same time,
sure,
there's still the same kind of stats.
And it really does. You can tell. There's the eye test. You go out and you watch a kid run. You say that kid can run,
right.
Or yeah, maybe. But you see certain kids running, you just know.
And that's why you're the head coach, because you're the one that can spot that, or your staff can spot those kids.
I guess so. I've been watching running for a long time now. So
exactly. All right. So we'll talk about that was the pre-national meet. There was another meet the Cougars were involved in. We'll talk about that, and then again, get ready, talk about more of the individual runners that are on the two teams when we come back, talking Cougar cross country, getting ready to host the AMC tournament and looking for a shot to go to the Nationals in Kansas coming up later in November. We'll be back after this with Coach Tim Cornell on ColumbiaCougars.com and Mediacom Channel 22.